Demet Özdemir's hidden truth has finally come to light, and the raw emotion in her voice has stunned everyone who thought they knew her story. Welcome to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and support the channel. Your comments and your presence here mean more than you know. Tonight, we're opening a door that Demet herself had kept closed for far too long. She spoke, without makeup on her feelings, about the hardest stretch of her career and the surprising ways she stayed afloat. From the brutal online storm that hit in 2022 to the way she took shelter and food, from a therapist's sentence that held her together to what's really happening behind the scenes of the Eighth Family, every question you've been whispering will find an answer here. What Demet said has never been heard in this way, and it has moved her fans to silence. And then to fierce understanding. If you're ready, take a breath with me, and let's step into her world. Her voice didn't tremble when she said it, but it carried memories that her eyes couldn't hide. I eat for emotions. When the tide rises inside me, I find a plate and hold on. It wasn't a quip. It was a confession. And with that single sentence, Demet didn't just start a conversation, she reached into everyone who has ever soothed a private ache with a familiar taste. 2022 carved something sharp into her, she explains, and the Eighth Family has been the doorway where she learned how to turn sharp edges into something steady. She speaks with the candor that made people fall in love with her in the first place, but now there's something else, a quiet bravery that says, I've been through it, and I'm still here. From the outside, 2022 looked like motion and milestones. The photos were polished, the headlines breathless, the calendars filled with set calls and interviews and premieres. But fame's light throws a long shadow, and that year, Demet learned how cold it could be inside that shade. When her period drama arrived on a global platform, the first wave was applause, the second was a surge of critiques that didn't stop at her performance. The comments were ruthless, sometimes theatrical in their own right, often forgetting there was a person reading them. Some accused her of being too mannered. Some said the tone of the series swallowed the cast whole. The loudest voices decided they could define her. Demet chose silence then, not because she had nothing to say, but because she felt something precious slipping, her grip on reality. She remembers one afternoon when the room felt like it was tilting and air became a decision. That's when a sentence from therapy took root and refused to let go. It's difficult, but it's real. We will have hope, we will be brave, we will give it time, and we will be patient. Demet repeats it like a small prayer, without performance, without pretension. Those words didn't erase the noise, they gave it a name. They told her the pain was not a performance. It was simply real, and it needed time. She learned to sit beside it instead of drowning beneath it. And with that, the work of healing became less like a battle and more like a long, deliberate walk. There's a softness when she talks about food, the kind that belongs to childhood kitchens and evenings that end with warmth instead of headlines. She says it with shy humor, but there's no apology beneath it. She turns to food when everything else is loud. The scent of a simple dish, the first bite of something she associates with safety, the clink of a spoon that marks a pause, these are the anchors she reaches for when the current gets strong. She doesn't describe it as running away. For Demet, eating is a way of arriving back at herself, of returning to a body that works hard for her and a spirit that refuses to break. It wasn't just the paparazzi or the press, it was the swarm online, faceless yet oddly intimate. One day you're everyone's darling, the next you're a trend worded like a verdict. Even the compliments could sting, because they measured her against her own past or against partners and performances she'd given in another time, another skin. During those weeks, she stopped scrolling at night and started cooking instead. A simmering pot was quieter than a screen, and she learned the secret rhythm of timing, when to stir, when to step back, when to let something rest. And then came the Eighth Family, a new chapter that didn't erase the old but made space for it. The buzz around the series began slowly, then all at once. Something changed in the air around Demet, those who saw her on set noticed it first. She wasn't frozen by criticism anymore. She was measured, confident, and somehow lighter, as if she'd stopped carrying the imaginary jury every time she walked into a scene. She prepared with a kind of private fire, then set it free in front of the camera with no apology. She could laugh between takes, make a gentle joke to lift a partner's shoulders, then sink right back into the story with the same intensity as ever. The crew whispered that she had found a new center. Inside that center stands a familiar presence, Ken Yaman. Their names carry an electricity that Turkish audiences know by heart, but off the screen he became something steadier than electricity. Comparisons followed Demet everywhere in 2022, whispers about chemistry, about partnerships that felt like another time, about what the camera should capture versus what it did. The conversation circled back to the magic she and Ken created in the past, and sometimes those comparisons turned into cudgels. Demet doesn't speak in gossip. She speaks in truths that matter. She mentions that during the worst of the noise, Ken approached her as a professional who respects the craft and as a friend who knows how to hold space. He reminded her, without sentimentality, that she could set the tone for her own narrative. He helped her steady her breath when the world demanded a sprint. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was a kind of work, two people who know what it is to be watched, talking about what to watch within themselves. Demet says that when she felt herself slipping into the version of herself that only existed on timelines, she would call him, and he would take the conversation back to real ground. What did the scene need? What did the story demand? What did she want to protect in herself? He offered perspective, not permission. In that, she found strength. The most arresting part of Demet's reflection comes when she stops deflecting and says it plainly. There were days when reality bent out of shape. She began to hear her name in other people's voices. She measured the worth of her day by stranger sentences. She let the loudest comment decide how she should feel about her own work. Even success felt thin, like paper you could rip by breathing too hard. That is a brutal honesty, the kind that strips the glamour from fame and leaves only the human being underneath. But time, even when it crawls, does move. And somewhere in the pressure, something softened. Demet began to practice patience like an art. She let herself be imperfect in private so that she could be present in public. She traded the need to win every argument for the need to sleep at night. She started making space for rituals that felt like home. A quiet meal at evening light. A simple show that makes her laugh, watched on a couch instead of in a dressing room. Long conversations with Ken about craft, about boundaries, about where to draw the line between their identities and their images. The outside world remained loud, but the inside world began to hum. On the set of The Eighth Family, that hum turned into focus. She walked in with a calm that everyone could feel, and it changed the temperature of the day. There was less flinching, more listening. Less bracing for the blow, more trusting the work. The scenes that demanded everything didn't drain her dry, they asked for her openness, and she gave it willingly. When a take ended, she didn't rush to check a phone. She checked in with her scene partner, with the director, with herself. She encouraged a younger actor to trust their first instinct. She thanked a crew member and meant it. It wasn't performative kindness, it was the discipline of gratitude. Talk long enough about Demet, and you will say his name too, Ken Yaman. There is a gravity to their story that doesn't need embellishment. When old criticisms resurfaced, those that judged Demet's work by measuring it against the myth of their past pairing, it could have reopened old wounds. Instead, it revealed a new loyalty. Ken didn't argue with the noise, he redirected it. He spoke about the discipline behind the sparkle and the hours behind every scene. He reminded her, gently but firmly, that the only chemistry that matters is the chemistry she has with her own choices. If people miss a certain chapter, that means the chapter mattered, it doesn't mean the book is over. Demet smiles when she talks about food again, because at the end of the day, the heart needs simple things. Eating, watching something, seeing people she trusts. It sounds small until the world grows too big. She is not embarrassed to say that a quiet dinner can be salvation. That a silly comedy with Ken can empty a day of its exhaustion. That a late-night drive through an almost empty city, windows cracked, music low, can thread a stray thought back into place. These are not escapes. They are re-entries. There's a lesson buried in there about the two faces of social media, and Demet doesn't shy away from naming both. It can lift you so high that the wind burns, it can drop you so fast you forget how to breathe. One day brings bouquets of praise. The next brings rocks wrapped in words. And still, she shows up. She reads when she can. She goes quiet when she must. She refuses to let her reflection be replaced by a projection. The fury that crashed over her in 2022 did not end her. It gave her a map, where not to go, what not to do, what promises to make to herself and keep. Now, she stands differently. There's a steadiness to her posture and a softness in her tone that refuses the bait of perpetual defense. She does not need to clap back to exist. She does not need to prove that she belongs in every room. She walks in, does the work, and lets the scene make the case. She still feels deeply, almost too deeply. But it no longer drowns her, it carries her forward. She holds on to reality like a railing and shares her feelings because keeping them hidden made them heavier. And in sharing, she found other people, thousands of them, who said, "Me too." Her confession about emotional eating is not a quirky headline. It is a human truth. Sometimes the body wants what the soul cannot ask for out loud. Sometimes a bowl of something warm doesn't solve anything, it simply makes surviving tonight possible. There's no shame in that. There's only the knowledge that you will keep going, and that tomorrow you will try again. Demet stripped away the idea that perfection is the price of admiration. She let people see the person underneath the persona. Bruised, resilient, moved by love and by fear and by the stubborn desire to do better work. If there is a love story woven through all of this, it's one of respect and reality. With Ken beside her, not as a fantasy but as a grounded force, she discovered that the loudest storms pass sooner when you refuse to shout at the wind. He showed up in the quiet ways, the call before a tough day, the message after a premiere, the visit to set that ended with a laugh instead of a headline. He knows the cost of being watched and the value of being seen, and he chose the latter for her. So here we are, at the end of this chapter and the beginning of another. The Eighth Family is not just a series title on a poster, it's the signal flare of a woman who learned how to stay. To stay with her craft. To stay with her truth. To stay with herself when the crowd turned. And she did not do it alone. She did it with help, with time, with patience, and yes, with a fork and a favorite dish when the night grew long. That is not weakness. That is the art of surviving long enough to thrive. Tell me, how did Demet's words land with you? Have you ever reached for something simple, food, a film, the presence of someone you trust, just to make the moment softer? Share it in the comments, because your stories matter here. And if this moved you, let it be known. Like this video, subscribe to Turkish Spotlight Secrets, and turn on notifications so you're with us when the next story breaks. We'll be here, in the tender space between rumor and truth, bringing you the heart behind the headlines. Until then, take care of yourselves. We'll meet again very soon. Goodbye for now, and from all of us, warm wishes for the new year.